Hey guys, what's up? Video game unrelated topic today. I'm going to talk about Brexit, share my thoughts, because I feel the need to do so. Last night, the MPs rejected the EU withdrawal agreement by 432 votes to 202, which is a historic result, obviously historically negative result. And when observing the current debate around Brexit and the many angles that are presented in the media, it just seems like we've lost all clarity, right? There's so much confusion about fulfilling the will of the people. There are political power games going on, it seems like. There's a lot about dissatisfaction with the negotiated deal and whether a better deal could potentially be negotiated. It's about the fact that nobody can really foresee the consequences of the decisions being made right now. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and all that mixed together just leads to a big mess, right? There seems to be no clarity in this debate. So in this video, I will try to make a little bit more sense of this mess, because I think actually it's rather simple. It's not that complicated. People have just thought too much and too long about this, and then, as it often happens, you overcomplicate things and you lose the red thread that kind of should be there all the time, and that would really make sense. Oh, okay, let me try to break this down in the most simple terms. I think, and obviously this is my opinion, you can agree, you can disagree, you can share your opinion down in the comment section below, but please guys, let's try to keep it sensible. I see a lot of comments under YouTube videos where people just get unreasonably aggressive and offensive to each other. I don't want to see that on this channel. Keep it reasonable, guys. If you agree or disagree with me, that both is fine, but keep it reasonable. So my opinion on this is that Britain was never really in a position to dictate anything to the EU in terms of the negotiations. It's like when you end your Netflix subscription, right? But then you go back to Netflix and say, well, I want to pay less of a fee, but I actually still want to access this content and that content, but not that content. It just doesn't work. It makes no sense. The unpopular reality of this is no matter who you send to Brussels, there won't be a different or a better deal. Brussels has made this very, very clear. They said, we're not renegotiating, whoever you send, it will be the same deal. The real issue here is, in my opinion, again, is that Britain is too proud to accept that they are not in a good position to negotiate and that they'll have to accept what has been offered. They still believe that they can enter the situation with like a swollen chest while the EU is just sitting on the side and shakes their head, right? And they're like, this is not how this works. And unless the UK is accepting that they are not as important and as great as they see themselves, they will literally dig their own grave. Now don't get me wrong, of course the EU itself is also not an economic paradise, so it's very hard to predict where the EU and the UK will be in 10, 15 years time, but for right now, it's the UK's false pride and the lack of realistic reflection on their own position that will potentially put them in a terrible position in the near future. So moving forward, there are really not that many options. You can go with the deal that's on the table, but considered how many parliamentarians voted against it yesterday, I'm not sure that's even still a real option. You can go with no deal, which you hear a lot now, and a lot of people make it sound like, yeah, well, that's what we voted for originally, a hard Brexit, we want to cut all ties, yada, yada, yada. I think that's not really what was voted for, and in fact, it's actually crazy, because you still need to establish trade relationships with many partners in the EU, as well as immigration agreements and so much more. Keep in mind, the UK imports 53% from Europe. The remaining 47% come from other nations under EU trade deals. So in case of a no-deal Brexit, the UK will have to negotiate new deals under these World Trade Organization terms with dozens of countries individually. But when the UK tries to make deals with them that will undermine EU trade, the EU as a unit will pressure the UK again by threatening to boycott their products. So if you stumble out of the EU without an agreement beforehand, you can't seriously believe that you'll get a better agreement on the fly when you are actually in the position of having time pressure to move forward, with companies needing to trade, with lorries waiting on your borders. So no deal would really be the absolute worst scenario, and I guarantee you, after negotiating with the many countries on the fly after the no-deal Brexit, you will be worse off in terms of the results and the deals than you would be with accepting the current deal. So you're just making the situation worse by going down the no-deal route. It's pretty clear, and everyone who has the foresight to understand those matters, I think, agrees on that. A new referendum is another option. in which people can basically choose between two options, one being stay in the EU, and the other one being go with the deal that's on the table, because these are really the two options. To say, oh no, we want to renegotiate, it doesn't work like this. I understand you want a better deal for Brexit, and I understand that you think the UK has some kind of privileged position in the EU, that they should get some kind of privileged treatment, but the reality is it's not how that works. And there have been negotiations, extensive negotiations with the EU, and now we're at the point where there is a deal, and that deal might be slightly altered, but it will not be renegotiated from scratch and come to a completely different result. It's just not an option. You have to be realistic about that. And then the last option, I guess, is an extension of the 2 years with, I think it's Article 50, to bring some order into this mess, which at the moment it looks very much like that will be the way we're gonna move forward. But let's reflect on this whole mess kind of in the bigger picture. Take a step back. I think a big problem that has been crystallizing throughout this whole messy process is that asking the people what they want is not necessarily always a good idea. I'm a big fan of democracy. You know, I'm 100% on board. I don't think any other system works for society. But it's the question how far you go in that democracy. Like what decision is made by some kind of overseeing authority and what decision can be made by the people. The problem is too many people are too easy to influence. We've seen it with the impact that the populist messages had with like the large numbers written on the Brexit campaign bus. We got simplified facts that were just simply not true, right? That intentionally misled people and pushed them to vote for leaving the EU. So seeing that really worries me, and similar things are happening in the US as well, where I think it's really scary to what extent people can be influenced by being fed, you know, reduced, simplified, or simply wrong information, and they just swallow it because they can't really check it themselves. They don't have the time. They're very much caught up in their own life. So they just take it for granted, and they're like, oh, wow, you know, we're paying that much to the EU. Well, it's not that simple. There are many factors, and you don't know how much you're going to pay afterwards. So the complexity of the matter is something that many people cannot grasp, not because they're all stupid, but because it's a very complex matter to understand. So is it a good idea to ask those people to make a decision like Brexit when they can't really fathom the consequences of their actions? The fact that quite a lot of people seem to have like a strange mentality that hard Brexit will somehow take the UK back to the glory of the Industrial Revolution, it's literally delusional. It makes no sense. And it shows again that people are not really capable of making a decision like that. And it also opens doors and enables radicals and populists at the same time, right? Which is a terrible thing, and it's really not something that you want to have happening. People in general are not very good at evaluating consequences of decisions of this magnitude. The idea to let them vote for leave or remain was a mistake, in my opinion, and I hope this mistake teaches us to estimate the limits of a sensible democracy better in the future. Again, I'm not saying democracy is a bad idea. It's good to involve the people in as many decisions as possible, but be sensible. Don't ask the people about something that they simply cannot foresee. I mean, even politicians can hardly foresee how this Brexit will be going and where we will be in 10 years' time. And I think screaming, respect the people's vote, and leave means leave, and, you know, no deal, that proves exactly my point. It's like an angry child that simply doesn't have the ability to estimate the consequences of their doing. You know, they're like, I want this thing. I only want to eat candy all day. It's like, yeah, that doesn't work. You cannot just eat candy all day. You're going to be sick afterwards. Kids do not understand that, but they still going to scream that they want candy all day. And in fact, I think instead of blindly executing the will of the people, a confident government should be ready to say, well, you know, we've evaluated all options that would execute your will, and it puts us in a terrible position as a country. We didn't know this before, now we do. So we use our power as a government to make an informed decision here. We will not sacrifice, in air quotation marks, this country just to blindly follow your will, because that doesn't make much sense. Blindly following the uninformed will of a majority rarely leads to good things, I think. Anyway, guys, these are my thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm pretty sure at least 50% of you guys will heavily disagree with what I had to say and will tell me about it in the comments. Again, let me underline, please be reasonable. I've just expressed my opinion, my thoughts on here. You have all rights to disagree. That's why we live in a democracy, and I'm very happy that we do. So share your thoughts, but please keep it reasonable. Normally, I do more video game content on this channel and talk about a little bit more of light-hearted topics. So if you want to see that, if you want to come back to this channel, I would very much appreciate that. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, take care, and I'll see you next time, guys. I'm out. Bye.